The third and final vision talk is another entrepreneur who is from Nigeria and has operated pretty much in Asia, so in mainland China, in Southeast Asia, and he's going to be telling us about DFL Investments, his new company that is focused on investing in Nigeria and creating major opportunities in Africa. So Ladi Delano is our final vision speaker. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Unfortunately, I'm actually not going to tell you about my new company at all. I'm actually going to talk about what I deem to be my vision for Africa, rather than talk to you about business and entrepreneurship, which I'm familiar and used to doing, but I think you've heard quite a lot about that over the last day or so. When I started to prepare my vision talk, I initially thought I knew exactly what it was I wanted to talk about, my vision for Africa. After all, I'm an African who has returned to live and work on the continent, so surely I must have some type of a vision. But after several different attempts to kind of jot down some ideas, I drew a blank. What is my vision for Africa? Is it to build an investment firm well-positioned to harness the many investment opportunities on the continent? Is it the vision of building a portfolio of successful companies and creating high returns for my investors? Or is it to be a pioneer, a trailblazer, leading the way in opening up new sectors and industries on the continent? And the answer is simply, it's neither of these, none of them. These are just all my personal goals, not a vision of how I, Ladi Delano, can positively impact the continent. It became clear to me that somewhere along the line, my vision for the continent had been consumed by my own personal goals. I felt for the first time since returning home that I'd lost my focus. To find this again, I decided to start at the beginning. These are my parents. They're two Nigerians who fell in love while studying in London in the late 1970s. My father was finishing off his master's in accountancy, and my mother was doing her undergrad in town planning. After about 6 months of dating, my father popped the question, and to the surprise of many of their friends at the time, my mother actually said yes. Now that's a man with a vision. Within a year, they were married and ready to start a new life together. A life that they knew they could only start outside the shores of Africa. You see, like many Africans before them, and many more after them, the concept of living and working on the continent of Africa at that time was incomprehensible. As we all know, the continent was experiencing widespread instability and unrest. There were over 20 different wars and conflicts taking place on the continent at that time alone. That really wasn't a place to start a family. So my parents settled down and started a life in a foreign land, harboring the hope, the vision, that one day Africa would become a place they could call home again. Over the coming years, my parents successfully built a nice, comfortable life for themselves and went on to have 4 wonderful children. And that's me. My sisters and I had an amazing childhood, and we were afforded every opportunity in life to achieve our dreams. It was actually while preparing for this talk that I truly realized that all these freedoms and opportunities were freedoms and opportunities granted to us by my parents. I remember as a child, and I'm sure a lot of you would also remember the same, or even hear the same till today, that my parents would always speak about when we move back to Nigeria and when Nigeria is a better place. And don't worry, Nigeria is coming. You see, my parents never lost their African identity. They never lost their hope for Africa. They, along with so many other African parents, knew that the only way to fulfill their vision of returning back home was to ensure that Africa turned a corner and started its journey of stability and development. They knew that in addition to the efforts of remitting money back home to family members to start businesses, the only way to truly ensure Africa's progression was to equip a generation with the skill set needed to make it happen. Ladies and gentlemen, that generation is us, you and I. They focused on ensuring we received the best education possible, even if that meant working 2 or 3 jobs and sacrificing their own dreams so that we could fulfill ours. You see, our parents had a vision that one day Africa would start to reach its full potential, a vision that one day every African would be empowered to have control over their own destiny, a vision that one day they could return to an Africa they would be proud to call home. After more than 25 years, our parents' generation have broken down the barriers and glass ceilings. They have endured and succeeded, despite the odds, to kickstart an African economic revolution that will mark the start of a new Africa. Their vision has actually started to come true. 14 African countries have grown their GDP by more than 6% on average over the last 5 years. The rate of return in Africa is higher than any other developing region in the world today. If combined, the overall GDP of all all the continent's 55 nations now make it the 5th largest economy in the world. I believe Mr. Cummins mentioned it was 2.6 trillion by 2020, if I'm not mistaken. Whatever economic indicators you use, there's no disputing the fact that African economies are on the move. However, this economic revolution is at great risk. We all know Africa is a young continent. According to the UN, 70% of the African population is under the age of 30. That's 700 million people. This young and rapidly growing population is estimated to add 122 million people to the labor force over the next 6 years. In fact, it's estimated by 2035, Africa's labor force will be larger than any nation, including that of China and India in terms of their labor force. However, the biggest threat facing the African growth story, our parents' vision, is unemployment, specifically youth unemployment. Youth unemployment in sub-Saharan Africa currently stands at over 25%, with Nigeria having the highest at over 50%. Considering over 60% of the Nigerian population is under the age of 35, you can only imagine what a true, real threat this truly is. Just to put things into perspective, during the Great Depression of the 1930s, which till today is still the most severe economic depression in the Western world, youth unemployment at its peak was at 27.8%, at its peak. So this begs the question, how is a continent experiencing such high growth rates while also experiencing depression-style unemployment? The truth of the matter is, job creation is simply not keeping up with population growth. There are more people coming into the workforce than jobs being created. Having had the opportunity to travel up and down the continent, I can tell you that seeing our unemployed begging for money is just not right. Happy weekend. You're not going to give us any money for happy weekend, my chairman. Anything for the boys? Oga, you're not going to settle us. This is not our culture. This is our unemployed having no other option but to beg. The fact that 16 people recently died while seeking employment during the Nigerian Immigration Service recruitment drive is just a prime example of how serious a threat this truly is. How can 160,000 people apply for less than 4 100,000 jobs. That's more than 40 applicants per job. Although I don't know the numbers here at MIT, I'm sure that's on par with competing to get a place here, to find a job in Nigeria. You see, the equation of a young population with high youth unemployment only spells social unrest and instability. And we don't have to look that far to learn the lessons of what unrest and instability can do to the continent. I, for one, as an African, refuse to let unrest and instability be our curse. It's not. Trust me when I say, and you might not believe this, I'm not here to bring gloom to the African growth story at all. It's evident I clearly believe in it. But I am here to challenge you to all stand up and protect that vision of our parents. To do so, I believe the only way is to ensure the continent grows faster. And herein lies the true African growth opportunity. But the question is, can we, Africa, actually grow faster? And my response is simple. Yes, we can. Thailand, South Korea, Brazil, and China all managed to create jobs at triple the rate Africa is doing today, when their economies were at similar levels of development. Although a great challenge, I know we can rise to the occasions because we Africans are innovative and determined, and we never shy away from a challenge. So in my opinion, the true African growth story is not just about GDP growth alone, or businesses, hence why I'm not here speaking about my company today. But it's about the creation of a sufficient amount of stable employment to absorb our growing youth, so that they can grab their share in the African dream that is so often written about in Western publications, a dream that will empower them to take control of their own destiny, an African dream that will forever can change the continent for the better. I keep returning to the same thought time and time again, that citizens of developing nations can only achieve their undeniable potential through economic empowerment. Without their own individual financial independence and stability, the African youth will always be bound to the oppressive and restrictive environment of our past. You see, by my definition, sustained economic growth only creates a developing nation when growth can truly reach the people. And this can only be done through employment. Now back to my parents, a tad bit older now. As somebody who has returned back home to Africa, I must say that we, the diaspora, have been blessed to have had the opportunity to have been trained and educated abroad. An opportunity afforded to us due to the many sacrifices all our parents have made. We've had the opportunity to acquire skills and habits that are needed to create real, tangible change on the continent of Africa. Whether it's entrepreneurs returning to Africa to build businesses in labor-intensive sectors like agriculture, manufacturing, retail, and hospitality, and create jobs, or online activists driving political reforms through social media to open up those labor-intensive sectors like agriculture, manufacturing, retail, and hospitality. Policy entrepreneurs, if you will. We all have a role to play. So in conclusion, my vision for Africa is now very clear. It's not to focus on achieving my own personal goals alone, but it's to take the baton from my parents with open arms and build on this economic growth story of today by ensuring that I play my role in confronting its biggest threat, youth unemployment, by innovating and working hard to ensure the continent does grow faster and create that sufficient amount of jobs needed for those entering the workforce. doing my part to ensure the African dream is shared by all and not just a few. I sincerely hope that this vision will challenge you all to do the same and help build an Africa that we, our parents, and our children will be proud to call home. Thank you.